and welcome to the second session of our District Assembly. Thank you for joining us. We're delighted to announce that over 500 people have watched last week's session. 142 attended live and a further 370 have viewed it during the week via YouTube. That is fantastic, and we really couldn't have expected any more than that. We're delighted. We wouldn't have got that number, I'm sure, physically attending at the Bury St Edmunds School. Today, inside District 1080, we focus on three areas. Derek Rothwell will be talking about foundation. Ray Berman is presenting on membership, followed by Ian Elliott covering public image. And he will be joined by Sean Lowthorpe during his presentation. I might like to remind you that you can post questions on the chat box, which is more for getting questions to us than it is to sending hello, how are you, which I'm sure you've probably all done already. So right, we're going to settle down now, and I'd like now to ask Derek Rothwell to the screen. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Because Ian wasn't confident that I'd be able to make all this work, I produced a video which I'd like to show you now. So Ian, could you run the video? This session of the District Assembly is about foundation. For the next 15 minutes, I'm going to take you through some of the great things that foundation achieves and how foundation executes them. I'll start with an introduction, and then we'll cover some things in more detail. Foundation is a word that means loads in the USA, but isn't so straightforward in the United Kingdom. The Cambridge Dictionary defines it as an organisation that has been created in order to provide money for a particular group of people in need of help or of a particular type of study. This sounds a bit like the Rotary Foundation. Looking at the Oxford Dictionary, we find the definition includes an institution established with an endowment, for example, a research body or charity. We can pick out of these definitions a fund to help people and an institution with an endowment. This pretty well covers Rotary, so let's now take a look at the objectives of the Rotary Foundation. Foundation has a mission to advance world understanding, goodwill and peace through the improvement of health, the support of education and the alleviation of poverty. This is humanitarian help, and the Foundation does not limit it to local causes or limit it to international causes. The publicity machine doesn't always do Rotary favours by focusing on specific parts of the world, leaving to a view that it is all that Rotary does. It seems obvious that Foundation belongs to Rotarians, but the corollary of that is that Foundation is your charity and it relies on you for support. A great charity is one that addresses a need and is efficient. Many UK charities declare how much goes to their cause and how much goes into administration. Typical figures are around 70%. Rotary Foundation has been externally assessed and is at 92%. The difference going to administration and some marketing functions. Brilliant. Having set the scene and introduced Foundation, here are the topics I will be covering. I'm going to talk about how Rotary uses its money to provide humanitarian help, and then talk about funding. You'll see my agenda on the slide. Let's start with grants first. All Rotary grants must fit into one of the 6 areas of focus. You can see the areas of focus on the left side of this slide. Funding given to each area of focus is shown on the right side of the slide. The number to remember, though, is $86 million. That's nearly £70 million. Few charities can match that. Now I'm going to talk about Rotary Scholars. In many presentations, they are the last item before we turn the lights out. The good work we do with our scholars needs to be broadcast more. Scholars are supported for both maintenance and tuition fees using a global grant. The amount of money involved depends on the university and course, but it is in the region of £30,000 to £50,000. Financial support from a Rotary club is required, and the Foundation World Fund matches the club funds. So the sponsor is responsible for upwards of £15,000. This district prides itself in funding a scholar from a poor background. This is done in memory of Rotarian Hilary King, whom some of you will remember. It takes upwards of 2 years to ring-fence enough funding to make this happen. This year we supported Monica Nirula from Nepal. Next year we will be saving up. I should also thank clubs who provide hosts for the scholars, and of course our scholars chair, Tony Platt. The fact that the hosts drive the scholars around the district to allow them to share their experiences with clubs often goes unnoticed. In addition to funding scholars, Rotary also funds peace studies. We intend to make an impact in spreading peace across the world. Rotary sponsors 50 fellowships for master's degrees and 80 fellowships for certificate studies each year. Peace Fellows need endorsement from a district for their application to progress. They can approach any district worldwide. We have 2 candidates this year, one from Guatemala and another nearer home in London. The endorsement process is a responsibility of the district. The applicants are generally, but not limited to, young candidates, and Rotary needs to give them every help in their quest to spread the message of peace. There are 8 Rotary Peace Centres. We are fortunate to have a peace centre in the UK at Bradford. Each year we apply for a distance hosting peace fellow to come to this district. Our applications have been successful, but other circumstances have not been in our favour. In 2019, our distance hosting peace fellow had to return home because of an emergency, and this year the pandemic has stepped in. And now to polio. Since 1988, Rotary has been leading in the quest to eliminate polio. We've been working with the World Health Organization, and as most of you will know, the wild polio virus is now only found in Pakistan and Afghanistan. Polio cases have been diminishing, but over the past couple of years, the decrease has plateaued. You will see mention of a circulating vaccine-derived polio virus on the slide. This is where an excreted vaccine virus circulates in the environment for an extended period of time and genetically changes to a form that can paralyse. We've had fantastic support from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, but our fundraising needs to continue. Until polio is eliminated, there will be a need to support Rotary's efforts. The Rotary Polio Plus Fund continues to need our help, and unfortunately you will see from the graph that this district's efforts are not going as well as they have in the past. This data is from April 2020, and I really hope that in the last 3 months of the Rotary year you will reverse the trend. I appeal to you all to think about this graph and to set your club's goals to reverse the trend. So let's now talk about goals. When I was DG, the RI President set goals for clubs and Rotarians, and these were presented in a booklet. The 2019-20 goals are a continuation of the same process, and you will see the current booklet on the screen. If you achieve enough goals, you'll get a presidential citation. On the left-hand side, you will see the extracted giving goals that the President has challenged us to meet. This equates roughly to £60 to the Foundation Annual Fund and £30 to Polio Plus per year. This year, the incoming Rotary President, Holger Knack, is trying something different. Now you can set your own goals. In Rotary Club Central, there are 25 goals covering different aspects of Rotary and fundraising. Pick 13 and go for them. If you achieve the target you have set, you may get a certificate. Be proud of the certificate. In the slide, I've shown the Annual Fund and the Polio Plus Fund, alongside other key funds in Rotary Foundation. The Annual Fund is a source of funding for grants. Just like the Polio Plus Fund, it is totally dependent on your donations. Donations are welcome from any source, you, your club, or other benefactor. This first slide of 3 shows donations to the Annual Fund, and that the money is split into the District Designated Fund, which I will refer to as DDF, and the World Fund. How is the DDF and World Fund used? DDF provides the funding for district and global grants. A district has complete control over the use of DDF within Foundation rules. We'll see how the World Fund is used shortly, but for now we'll complete the picture with the Polio Plus Fund. Everything given to Polio Plus goes directly to polio and the place of need. I'll now take a look at DDF. As I said earlier, DDF funds grants. At the discretion of the district, we can also use it to fund peace centres, or perhaps give it direct to Polio Plus. In this district, I have to balance the demands of grants with the DDF available, and this is starting to mean that not every activity can be funded. You can also see in this slide the 3-year cycle that Rotary operates. During the 3-year period, Rotary is able to benefit from interest on investments, which has the effect of reducing administration costs. How does this affect us? Annual fund money is available immediately for grants as would be expected, but the amount is dependent on our fundraising 3 years ago. To mitigate this, we should set targets each year and achieve them. Then there will be no hiccup in Rotary funding. As a recap, DDF is a continuous flow, providing we keep funding the annual fund. We can use DDF to pay for projects through a district or global grant, as well as polio and peace. As before, we need to reflect on our giving to the annual fund. The picture is similar to the Polio Plus fund. A great deal of improvement is possible. Now, how do these funds help our projects? I'll take the simple stories first. Polio Plus cash is matched 2-to-1 by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Separately, I can also spend our DDF, and this is matched 50% from the World Fund, then 2-to-1 by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The point is that your efforts are at least double, giving polio donations a significant boost. The next example is for Rotary Scholars. Here the World Fund matches or doubles club contributions. Then we have district grants. These are available for smaller projects. A club contribution of £500 will be matched from DDF. Larger amounts are available by joining up with another club that is able to contribute a further £500. The story for global grants will change at the start of the next Rotary year. The contribution from the World Fund now will be a minimum of $15,000. Smaller amounts will not be available. The slide shows a couple of examples. The first shows a calculation now where the World Fund matches club cash 50% and DDF 100%. The second example is the new calculation and shows how DDF makes good the loss from the World Fund. This puts pressure on DDF. You can see how clubs don't need to raise as much money to contribute to a grant, but that more money needs to be available as DDF. DDF comes from the annual fund, which is based on club donations. The money needs to come from somewhere. The important message is that Rotary enables projects by giving generously to them. But there is one important point, and that is that none of this matters unless we do projects to take advantage of this money. All you need to know about this slide is that DDF available is going down in this district. Cast your mind back to the previous 2 slides and you will remember that DDF is the core of Rotary giving. This slide is a statement of giving this year. My inclination is to start to rebuild our DDF. Remember, this is low because donations haven't been keeping up with our spend. I may limit the pool to 25% of the annual fund contribution, and this will impact the district grant offers. If a global grant project came along soon, then much of our DDF would be consumed. How do we decide how to spend our DDF? This is a matter for the Foundation Committee. If you want to influence how it is spent, then come and join us. You can always come as an observer. We may even spot that you are next in line to be the DRFC. So we are now near the end. As it says on the slide, our contributions are down, we can do less projects, and we are therefore less effective in our communities. Remember that Foundation is the Rotary charity. It is therefore your charity. Please set fundraising goals. Last year we had 28 district grants, some clubs with more than one, but there are 67 clubs in the district. I think every club should have a project that needs a district grant. That's all for now. Thank you for listening.
Well, thank you very much, Derek. I'm sure a lot of you realise it's a lot to take in. And I think this is a classic advantage where those of you that want to listen to that again, or indeed show it to your clubs when you're having an evening talking about Foundation, would be very useful. And I would like to thank Derek and his team, because it is a very, very accurate thing that they have to do. But please remember that the giving we give now will affect the DDF in 3 years, and we need to up the ante a little bit. And I do feel personally sometimes that clubs forget about foundation. It is the Rotary charity, as Derek said at the beginning. Okay, well, now I would like to invite Berman to the screen to talk about membership. Thank you, Berman.
Thank you, District Governor. And good morning all. We're about to enter our 4th year of our district membership strategy. And I prepared a short presentation on what we're looking to do in this coming Rotary year. Thank you, Ian.
Well, good morning everybody and welcome to the District Assembly. The point of the presentation is to look at how we can grow Rotary in our district, and just a little bit of history of the slide that shows how our strategy has developed, and that's the district team are looking to engage with clubs, help them develop their own personal club membership strategy, and then embed that strategy in the thinking of the club. So membership development is always an ongoing thing. And then we look at our membership decline, and our decline is very much the same with other districts around RIBI, and indeed many districts in the developed world. But actually it's beginning to ease off a little bit and plateau a little bit. But it's something that we have to learn to live with. So what do we still need? Well, of course, we're still underrepresented in the areas that actually will bring energy to our membership. Visible ethnic minorities, of course, local businesses, and I'm aware of the COVID implications to that. We're not necessarily representative of all our local communities. Both females and young professionals are still very much underrepresented in our clubs. So there are ways to grow. Rotary sees that still the mainstay of Rotary is what I call our inherited clubs, our traditional clubs, the normal Rotary club that I belong to. But we've seen a move over recent years to look at satellite groups to attract younger people, e-clubs. And of course, many clubs during this lockdown have gone on to what is effectively e-clubs. They've used Zoom, and some clubs I know are even thinking of doing some of their future club meetings after when we're unlocked, after lockdown, to actually carry on using Zoom. Passport clubs, where a Rotarian, a member, is allowed to visit different Rotary clubs and different areas. Corporate clubs, well, we're looking for local companies to be involved, or actually starting a Rotary club within a local company, a local organisation. What's interesting is the cause-based clubs. These are where clubs are formed around a particular passion or a particular cause, a service project. And Rotaract clubs, which of course we're very limited on at the moment. And then finally the hybrid, and I'll speak more of that later in the presentation. You all know, I guess, that Rotary was formed way over 100 years ago by these 4 chaps here, and the district this year, in this year's Rotary membership strategy, are looking to get back to our origins, getting back to how we started clubs. We've had a fair bit of research done across the district, identifying territorial areas, geographical areas where we can actually form new Rotary clubs. And why do we want to start a new club? Well, we want to engage with our community. We want to find new ways of making an impact and helping people locally. It allows us to continue to connect with the Rotary world and pass on that valuable gift of Rotary membership that you received. A new club will help us start and shape a new way of doing Rotary, a new culture. It'll have its own tradition, its own service priorities, its own service projects that it wants to do. And of course, it will increase the diversity of our existing membership, looking at new ways of forming a club, the ways I've just covered, and allows us then maybe to look at new projects in communities and areas that we're not representative, and allows us to engage with our local communities. So What's the step process? Well, of course, we want to identify an area or a community. That may not be a village or a town. It could be, it could be a science block. It could be a hospital. It could be an area where there's a community, but in a business sense. Find the first four, just like those original Rotarians way back over 100 years ago. Get those first four together and then plan what you're going to do. Get them to understand what Rotary is, get to know each other meetings, get to understand what our own businesses or our own careers have been or our own interests are. And those first four will invite another four, and that will become those 8, and those 8, another 8. And then eventually you'll have 20 members to charter. Not as easy as it sounds, but you know what? It can be easily done. And then if you contact me, I'll help you do the necessary paperwork that needs to happen so that you charter, and we can then publicise the new Rotary Club. And then once you're chartered, you need to continue to develop the membership of that club. I talked about a hybrid club, and I want to speak about this group here. And it's the Rotary Speakers Club. It's a hybrid club. And you can see in the centre there, past District Governor Robert Lovick, he came up with this idea. He started it, he's worked hard, and it's growing. Unfortunately, lockdown has put them on pause as they have others. But it's interesting to look at the group there, the formation of this new Speakers Club. And they're looking as a hybrid Rotary. And it started as Robert started it with a very small steering group. They looked at fortnightly meetings, and they were lucky enough to get the Imperial Hotel in Great Yarmouth at no cost. They do not have a meal. They're supported by the existing traditional or inherited Rotary Club of Great Yarmouth Haven. And they're taking the best of what's Toastmasters, that Robert's heavily involved in, and the best of Rotary. And their intention is to make it a satellite club and then become a Rotary club in their own right. And what that would do, that group themselves would actually start to represent the areas that we're underrepresented in now. Those key demographics. Look at the photograph. So, in conclusion, what are we looking to do? Well, we need to grasp every single opportunity for membership. Traditional clubs, inherited clubs, need to re-energise, look at themselves, need to consider whether they should form a satellite group. Their experience in Zoom might mean that some of their meetings will now be in an e-club formation. Or if you're a sort of person that's moving around the country or spends time overseas, you might want to look at a passport club. Big companies in your area, let's approach them. Are they interested in forming a corporate club within their own organisation? Is there a particular cause or a particular project that's close to your heart that maybe you want to turn into a cause-based Rotary Club? Are there younger people in your area that you think might be interested in forming a Rotary Club? And more importantly, if you've got an idea, as Robert Lovick did, about a hybrid club, then go ahead, give it a go. Nobody minds. And here's my details. If I can help you at all, please contact me. I'm on the database. More than happy to talk through any idea that you might have, and hopefully help you with a little bit of funding towards that.
Well, thank you, Berman. I think membership is one of the enjoyable parts that we do in the teams in Rotary. We all look at our own club and we like to have new members coming into our own club. But to truly grow Rotary, which has been part of our continuity plan now, since Berman joined us in the continuity team, is actually not just putting bums on seats, as sometimes it's said. We want people that join our existing clubs to fit with that particular dynamic of your club. And where there are opportunities where perhaps the Rotary doesn't reflect the community that we are in, we might look at that and find another reason for getting a new club. So I'd like to thank Berman for that. And again, the information on there could be used when you're talking to your clubs, or Berman or any of us would come along and help support you. So thank you for that. Now I would like to introduce my District Governor-elect and PI, Public Image Chair, Ian Elliott. Ian, would you come to the stage? Thank you.
Hi, Jonathan. It's nice to be here. Good to see you all. Yeah, public image. I thought I've got just a graphic over my shoulder there, which I think hopefully sort of just explains what we're trying to do with public image, and how it fits in with the other presentations that we've had this morning. Our goal is to create an awareness of Rotary, what it is, so that when you're talking to people about membership, then people have an idea, to actually let people know what the wonderful works that we do from a foundation point of view and what our clubs are doing also. And if we can build that brand up, then membership can increase. And if membership increases, then as we've heard from Derek already, then there's more money to come into foundation. More money into foundation, we can do more. We can publicize more that we do. And so the circle goes on. So this is where public image fits in. But of course, the question is, how do we tell that story? Now, we have lots of resources. And one of the things that we will be doing is actually putting on a workshop, or several workshops if that's required, to show you the resources that we have, how you can get hold of those, how you can use those, because there's an awful lot of resource that you can actually use at club level to promote what Rotary does. But I suppose the biggest question is, how do we tell our story? And what I like to do now is introduce Sean Lowthorpe to you all, because Sean, if you were with us last year, then Sean actually did a breakout session for us. Sean is a professional journalist, and telling our story, I think, is the key to how this is all going to work. And Sean just has a few tips now, but Sean has very kindly agreed to join us for workshops. So I'm going to hand over to Sean, who's going to just give us a few tips now. Perhaps very briefly introduce yourself, Sean, and then we'll go from there. So over to you.
Great stuff. Thanks, Ian. And morning, everybody. Thanks for inviting me along to speak to you today. Slightly different circumstances to when I met some of you last year. As Ian explained, yeah, I'm Sean Lowthorpe. I'm a former Eastern Daily Press business editor and journalist. I was a journalist for 16 years or so, when I had a bit more hair than I have today. But through that time, I saw a lot about storytelling. I was doing it day in and day out. And I got a feel for what makes a good story and what makes a bad story. But what I want to do now is I'm going to walk you through 10 slides or so over the next 10 to 15 minutes. And I'm going to give you some sort of tips and tricks on how to build your story, and perhaps some of the ideas there that you can take on as well. So we heard from Derek and we heard from Berman. And there were some things in there that caught my eye that I thought, oh, maybe you could use these as stories. But before I do that, I'm just going to flick to the first slide, if I may. And I want you just to think of something in the back of your minds. I want you to think of a movie, a Hollywood movie, or something that you've seen and enjoyed, and keep that story in your mind, because you'll need it later. But don't worry, it could be any film that you like, or it could be a recent film or a classic film. But just have that film in your head, and I'll explain why a bit later. But first of all, if I just jump to the next slide, I'll give you some sort of context here. I've called this the end of the world order. Now, previously, someone like me, a journalist at the Eastern Daily Press or the East Anglian Daily Times or the local or regional newspaper where you live, I would have been the gatekeeper of information. You would have come to me for your news. You would have bought the paper, I hope. You would have advertised in the newspaper. You would have perhaps advertised to sell a house, to sell your car, to sell something. But actually what's happened in the last few years is that world has all gone. How many of you actually buy a newspaper every day? I suspect most of you would read it online or maybe buy it once a week. And in fact, things have really accelerated in the era of coronavirus as well. Our habits have changed. And if you look at the next slide here, you can see that in even more detail. This was just something that I lifted from the EDP website last night, actually, and you'll see a lot more of this. Become a supporter. Now, what's actually happening here is that the local media now, because they're losing readers of the newspaper and they're losing advertising revenue, their business model has changed and they're having to adapt, and they're asking people to become a supporter. So it actually means, will there be a local newspaper as we know it in the future? And nobody really knows. So it's one of those things where the world is changing rapidly, and I think we're going to see that accelerating as well in the next few months, actually, rather than few years. It's happening that quickly. But there are also some other things that are happening as well. If I just show you, we've moved from the newspapers being the gatekeeper to, if we skip to the next slide here, you'll actually see that you've got social media channels, you've got platforms like YouTube. You are broadcasting this on YouTube today, and many of you will be watching this on catch up. But what that means is that you can actually produce the story yourself. You don't need the gatekeeper to produce that information for you. You can actually do it yourself. And what we've seen there in the two presentations is the beginning of that storytelling. It is a presentation, yes, but it's also a way that you can tell your story and you can broadcast it. So you are actually empowered to do a lot more than you think. And again, skip to the next slide there and you'll see we're all publishers now. So some of you may be writing posts on LinkedIn, you may be taking photographs on Instagram, you may be using Twitter or Facebook, even all these different social media channels. You don't have to wait for anybody to tell you when you can publish your story. You can do it when you like, and those channels are open to you. So really, it is about making the most of those channels and doing what you can to get your message out there. And how do you do that? Well, if I show you here, it's pretty basic, really. This is the kind of stuff that I would have been teaching trainee journalists. And this is what I would have learned actually when I was training to become a journalist. The W words, the who, the what, the why, where, when, and how. And actually, these are the basics to building your story. So if you're thinking about an event, if you're thinking about getting some publicity, you want to ask yourself, have I said actually who is involved here? What's actually happening? When are we doing this? Where is it happening? And actually, why are we doing it? And you could just note this down as a checklist. You could write this down for yourselves and say to yourselves, okay, let's just write this and make sure that we've covered all of these points. It's basic stuff. But actually, when I was listening to Derek and Berman talking, some things sort of jumped up in my mind actually from this. You talked about the 6 key areas that Rotary is involved in. Well, actually, you can build stories around each of those. You mentioned the scholars and the peace studies. You could build a story around that particular student, the 2 students, the candidates that you mentioned. They would have had a story. And when Berman was talking, he actually had a list on his presentation which said, in my mind, 9 reasons to start new clubs. There's 9 ideas there. So even you can build on those. You've got that framework there that you can build on already. And that's actually quite powerful. And it makes it a lot easier for you to do because you're not struggling thinking, I don't know what to write about. But what you have to think about is you have to think, well, how am I going to capture the audience's attention? And the way you do that is you don't think about, you're not talking about yourselves. It's not me, me, me. You're talking about the benefits that you're bringing to the communities that you're working with and what you serve. And actually, most of the work that you're doing as Rotarians, there's enormous benefit there. So you can really talk about that and you can explain in detail what that means. So you've already got the building blocks actually of telling your story. And then all of you can think about how you do that on an individual level. Now, if I skip to the next slide here, let me just explain some things here. So I've called this the life cycle of a story. So let's think about that and let's just think about what we mean when we're talking about that. Often when you're thinking, oh, I need a bit of publicity, I'm going to talk about something, you'll actually think about it after something's happened. Okay, now if you look at my little slide there, I've got those 3 elements, the pre-story, the during and the post-story. And normally it's you've had an event and you think, oh, we better get something out to the press, we better say something. That's the post-story, and that's too often where the focus is. But you've got 3 bites of the cherry there. You can actually say something is going to happen. Okay, so next week we're going to be holding some workshops. You could talk about what's going to happen. How do we prepare for those workshops? Who's going to be coming? Meet the speaker. Let's have an interview with them. You could be talking about something that is going to be happening. Then, of course, you could be posting as it's happening. So as this meeting is going on now, you could be sharing something on Twitter. You could be putting out a photograph. Here we all are. We're all gathered on Zoom on this webinar. You can be talking about what's going on. So you're amplifying the noise a little bit. And again, if you're having a fundraiser, you could be taking photos of it as it's going on. But just remember, of course, the things about, the permissions and things that you need. Are you allowed to take the photos? Make sure that you've checked all that in advance. But don't worry about that today, because that's the kind of detail that we could get into on the workshops if that's of interest, how you put these things together. And then of course there's the post story. So something's happened. So you could put something out later today. We had a great session earlier on Rotary on Zoom. This is what happened. Let's recap. So you've got those 3 individual bites of the cherry that you can really make the most of. And don't forget, you can recycle too. Stories can be recycled. I call it slicing and dicing, and it could be for different audiences. So I think you were talking about, Berman was talking about the different audiences, those satellite groups, younger people. You can tailor the messaging for those different groups of people. And actually, as I said, we're all publishers now. Why not get them to tell the story and share the message? It doesn't have to be controlled by, the PR person, whatever. We can all tell stories, and that's the empowering thing. There are no gatekeepers anymore. We can all tell the story, because what it's about, and the word that you'll see now, is engagement. How you engage people in the activities that you're doing, how you can get them to join in, and you build that momentum. You get them interested. If I was putting my marketing hat on, it's attention, it's interest, it's desire, it's action. What is it that you want them to do? So remember that life cycle of the story. So use the who, what, where, when, how, and why, and then tap into the life cycle of the story. Okay, now I'm just going to flick over to the next slide now and give you some other examples of stories that you might want to use. This is particularly for things like SEO. Don't worry if you don't know what that is, but that's really about, they call it search engine optimization. In simple terms, it means getting found by Google. Now, this is an example that I'd sort of created for an accountancy firm. So it's actually nothing to do with Rotary at all, but actually there were some 3 key points there that you might be able to use. So I call them how-to articles. Okay. Now, in the case of the accountants, it's how to get paid on time without breaking into a sweat, but it's how-tos. And when you look at the internet, have a little look at the types of things that you're reading and see what sort of article that it is, what sort of content is it that you're latching onto. You'll see a lot of listicles these days. They'll use a lot of numbers. So 7 tips on how to get paid on time, 7 tips on what makes a great Rotary event, or it could be 17 things that you must know about this person that you're talking about. And so again, with this example, I've used the accountancy firm, but you could adapt some of this for you as well. And the interesting thing about this, and I don't know why, but they like to use odd numbers. And there's something about when it's an odd number, it just catches the eye, but also it's a sense of unfinished. If you use even numbers, 2, 4, 6, 8, doesn't matter. You can do that, but it just makes you think, oh, that's a complete list. Where if you say 17 or 21 or 39, you've strained every sinew to find out everything that you can tell people about. And then the other type of article, reasons why, and this might be particularly useful for Rotary as well, and reasons why you need to do something. Okay, reasons why you need to support our charity, or reasons why you need to get down to Bury St Edmunds for this event, or something. You could use that perhaps. And it's about bringing people's attention, hooking them in. So let's have a quick look at this example here that we've got reasons why. This is again for the accountants. So this is about getting on top of your cash flow. And then look at those little brackets there, because that's often the piece that will get people hooked in when you're sort of looking. And think about how you look at information, how you process that. I'm particularly interested in startups. So the second one there, I said, reasons why most startups fail, and then brackets, and what you can do to avoid that. I mean, that's a really key word as well. So think about how you can use those words, how you can use that language. A small person's just interrupted me there, so apologies for that. Looks like the postman's been. So yeah, look at those reasons why, and think about words that you can use as well. Urgency words are good. So now, avoid, a secret. People like a secret, so they like that idea. So think about those impact words and how they work. And that's good if you're weaving in keywords as well. If you're thinking about how to get found on Google, what your keywords are for Rotary, you can use some of those as well. So some very sort of simple techniques that you can play around with. And what I would say to you is just look at what other people do. Are they using this? And I think you'll find pretty quickly, yes, they are. So some good sort of useful tips and tricks. So build on that. You've got your W words, and then you've got the kind of the how-tos, the listicles, the reasons why. Okay, let me just show you the last thing. I asked you to think about a movie or a film that you'd watched. And this isn't something that I created. This actually comes from a book called Building a Story Brand it's an American called Donald Miller. Some of you may have heard of this book and have read it. But actually, there's something in there that I think is really useful for how you put together a story. And as I said to you before, the common mistake when people are storytelling, and the thing that I used to see at the EDP, is that people, they would talk about themselves, because obviously it's all about us, isn't it? It's about, it's about Rotary, what we're doing and how we're doing it. Well, yes, it is from your point of view, but actually it's about them. It's about the people that you're helping. So when you're talking about the charitable works that you're doing, it's about the people you're supporting. It's about those students that you're supporting on the different programs. It's about the people that you're helping at the event and the activities that you're doing. That's what people are interested in. It's that, what's in it for me? Why should I care about this? So if I just show you this little route map here that we've got, and I ask you to think about a film and see if this works, but take these 7 steps here. In most films, and Donald Miller uses the film analogy here, he talks about a character, okay? And that character has a problem, and then they meet a guide. And then what happens in the story, it gives them a plan, and that calls them to action. It makes them do something. And then there are 2 things that happen there. It either ends in success, or it helps them avoid failure. Now, most people, if I were to ask you to plug this in, when you talk about the character in your case, you might say, well, that's Rotary, that's us. But actually, if you plug it in there, it wouldn't work. So what actually is the character is, it's the people that you're working with, it's the people you're helping. And what's the problem? Well, it may well be that they've got problems with poor sanitation, water. So who's the guide? Well, it's Rotary, isn't it? That you're helping them, and you give them a plan, you're supporting them, you're helping them get clean water, or you're helping eradicate polio. And that calls them to action. It means that they can live a better life, or you're improving their opportunities, and that ends in success. So you can see how it works. So if we just use the film analogy there, I don't know what film that you came up with, but plug that in. I mean, the one that I always talk about, because I'm a bit of a sci-fi geek, is Star Wars. So apologies if you don't like this, but you've got a character, Luke Skywalker, he has a problem, living on a planet, he's bored, he meets a guide, Obi-Wan Kenobi, who gives him a plan. Let's jet off and try and rescue the princess. And that calls them to action, that ends in success. You can take this for virtually any film you like. Some people have gone a bit left field and thrown some films at me where it doesn't quite work. But actually, if you just try this, I think you'll find it works in most Hollywood cases. Hollywood has a formula for telling stories, and that's why it works. But actually, you can use that formula yourself. You can use it for your own organization, you can use it for your own business, and start to put your story together. So think about how you can tell a story, think about who you're trying to reach, and the words that you need to use. But as I say, this was just really a starter for 10. So if it's something that you're interested in, I'm more than happy to go into more detail for you at some of the workshops that Ian's explained. So really, that's it from me. So if there's any questions, I'll be hanging on to see if I can answer them. But good luck with your storytelling, and thank you for listening. Thanks very much.
Fantastic, Sean. Thank you very much for that. I think it's going to generate an awful lot of interest in terms of coming back for another session, because you've got the little grey cells, as a Belgian detective would have said, going, and I think it's the core of what we need to do from a public image point of view. I don't know if our other panelists would like to come back and join us now, if they're able to do that, or if they've gone down the pub. Oh no, here they are. Great, good to see you all. Just before I move on, can I just say that 1 or 2 people have had issues in terms of getting through Eventbrite to get onto the live streaming session. So we will be sending messages out to everybody with the link so that they can catch up on this. I've got some questions now. We are going to stick to the 1 hour, so I think we've got about 15 minutes for some questions. If everybody, no, they're all still here. Nobody suddenly disappeared out the back door because there are questions coming. So I don't know if you want to say anything, DG, just before I kick off the questions.
Well, yeah, I mean, thank you, Ian and Sean, and it summed up 2 things really there. That the telling the story, which is the subject that you spoke at. There's several clubs still think that they send things to the local newspaper and it never gets in. And I think it's because they perhaps hadn't seen the part about how newspapers have changed. And if we give them the story with the W words in there, and and then think of the last thing about the film and use that as a model, I'm sure we'll make great progress. So Sean, I really thank you for that. And again, when it reaches the wider audience, I hope that clubs can think about themselves and how they make public image of their club and Rotary in general improve. So yes, Ian, I think we can take some questions now.
Great. The first comment, just to make, just sort of hog it just for public image just for a moment. There were a lot of questions about branding and old pins and old logos, and it seems actually that perhaps the district governor might want to suggest that everybody in the district actually has a new branded logo tattooed on their arm. It will solve the problems of pins, and you know, it's a one-off. Anyway, let's a question for Berman, and you talked about cause clubs and forming cause clubs. Is there a possibility of forming cause clubs across districts? So you could have a cause club, but it's in more than one district.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the message from RI and RIBI is to be flexible. And I could see that working, particularly as Sean pointed out, that, you know, how the world's changing now, and social media's kicked in, and we can meet. You know, I often meet on Teams on my phone now, so I think that could easily be done, and I'd welcome an idea around that. And the cause could be anything. Obviously, foundation comes to my mind, but the cause could be anything that stretches across maybe the southeast of England or the east end of, you know, or Middle England or whatever. So yeah, absolutely, we could do that. I'd love that idea.
Great. Just Derek, on the well, there was one question probably about slides, which we will be able to make sure. Well, people will see the slides on the catch up, but perhaps we could make those slides available, because there was a comment. There was an awful lot of information there, which was really interesting and useful. But you know, to take it all in. But could you just there were a few questions on just how many projects we've had in the district this year through district grants. That was sort of missed. You did mention it, I know, because I saw it and I was watching intently.
Yeah, there was. If we think about this year, which is the Rotary year 1920, I think the number was 28. 28 individual projects which benefited from a district grant. Of those 28, some clubs they got rather enthusiastic and had more than one project, so the actual number of clubs was less than that. I think I said in the slide that there are 67 clubs in the district, and basically about 20 clubs were involved in this, which is not a great number. I'd like to see every club having some project which supports foundation. I think what Sean was talking about in building up the project from the start to the actual delivery, and then to say, well, this is what has been achieved. We need to think about that very carefully in order to sell the work that we are doing on behalf of foundation, on behalf of Rotary. Does that help you?
Yeah, great, thank you. A public image question, which well, there've been a few actually on the point of you know, information going out to clubs about what's going on. The comments are that it's pretty good, but information going out to the outside world is not so good. And should clubs be encouraged to actually put some budget aside to do that? And actually, another question sort of linking on to that was, should clubs actually invest in somebody to manage this for them and work with them? You know, is that something? You know, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that Sean, because I think, you know, people are saying, could Sean do it for the whole district? Well, 67 clubs. I'm not sure you've got enough time to do all that. But is that a sort of a feasible thing, Sean, that there might be people about who would be able to help in, you know, as outsiders, if you like?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously there are people like me or people who work in the industry that can help with sort of PR and promotions and marketing. I mean, I'm a great believer. I mean, uh, of if you can do things yourself and you can learn some of the techniques, it's a good thing to have, because, like I said, you've all got phones, you've all got access to Facebook. You can start getting some of those messages out. Obviously, the issue will be, well, there's not enough hours in a day, and we're busy doing other things, so we might need to get someone to do it for us. So I think it really depends on the aptitude of each club and each member and how much they want to have a go. And the other thing that I would probably add to that is, what do you want to do it for? So is it about raising awareness of what you're doing and using your own, say, Facebook page or your own website to draw people in, maybe to increase membership numbers? Or is it to raise awareness of what you're doing in the wider world? So I think a lot of it will depend on what the objectives are. That you've got and why you want people, who is it that you're trying to reach? What is it that you're trying to get them to do, and why do you want them to come to you? But yeah, I mean, you can, yes, of course you could get someone to do it. The only thing is, you're all experts in your particular group. You all know your groups inside and out, so you know what you're doing. So some of that may get lost in translation if you farm it out, but it really is down to you. There's no right or wrong answer.
Do you think actually it's a membership opportunity, Ray? That if you're working with people outside, then perhaps they actually might see the Rotary story and what Rotary's all about, and they actually might want to be involved. And ultimately, you could get some media professionals actually joining Rotary.
Well, absolutely. I mean, Sean's hit the head. Flush your mind back. It wasn't too long ago. We employed people at RIBI who were specialists. We spent many thousands of pounds doing it, and we learned that actually what Sean's just told us, that we have the knowledge and the expertise. What we need is people like Sean to teach us how to do it. Everything we do in Rotary, we should have an eye on a membership dividend. Absolutely everything. The vast majority of people who I've spoken to who are not Rotarians, and I say, why are you not in Rotary? And the simple answer comes back every time: nobody's asked me. Just got to reach out that hand and ask. And you know what? They join. And that way we do get those skills in. We do get that that diversity of professionals into professionalism into the organisation. And Sean said, right, I mean, I would love Sean to come and help every club in the district. But actually, it's seminars like this where we pick his brains, we don't pay him anything, and then we actually have those skills ourselves.
Right. Just changing, going across the foundation. Derek, you mentioned in your presentation about looking for people to help on the team and join the team. The question is, would e-club members be possible candidates to join the team, and they might be actually not in this country? Would that be a block to working with you?
Well, first of all, we have an e-club member already in the club. My grants chair is John Beer, who is a member of the e-club of Innovation. John does a great job in helping us there. So being a member of the e-club is not in itself a barrier to helping Foundation. My preference would be that the people who come to help us are from within this district, because a lot of what we do is district centric. Yeah, the members of the e-club can come and join us when they like. I guess that I have to change the way that we do our meetings, but I would have done that anyway because of the lockdown situation. We normally meet in September to review the district grant applications. And I think that my expectation is that we won't be doing that face-to-face at all. We'll be doing it via Zoom. So if somebody from the e-club would like to get involved, then that's fine. I think I would suggest that they spoke to John Beer first, who is a member already, and John can tell them a bit more about what we do, and hopefully they'll be interested.
Great, thanks. Question, Berman, how important is Rotaract to the future of Rotary? It's a pretty straightforward single question, really.
Well, the answer is the pre-question. I can remember when I joined Rotary 25 years ago, Rotaract was a strong force in our Rotary. Yeah, that's gone. You know, we've got an awful lot of young people, apart from the mentoring and the experience and life experience of Rotarians. We give them the benefit, as Robert Lovett's doing with that Speakers Club. We give them the benefit of learning skills that they won't necessarily get elsewhere, as well as they can come together to support their local community. But they must do it their way, not our way. They've got to do it how they want to develop. And that might be online, that might be through Zoom. You know, interestingly, Zoom, one of the effects we've had, one of the dividends, membership dividends we've had on Zoom in the church is we're getting people who wouldn't normally come to church logging on and listening to our Zoom services. Now that's a massive benefit, possible benefit to Rotarians, so people can understand what Rotary is doing. So Rotaract is absolutely beneficial. And again, it'll be the same as starting a new Rotary club. You want to get 2 or 3 keen people together, and then put them in contact with me or the DG or anybody else, and they can then start forming that nucleus of a future club.
Great. There are several more questions, but we are coming up to time, and I've got one question which I'd like to put to everybody. So, and I think that will be our time. Can I just point out that the plan is that that we will be having some workshops with all the groups. We will be, you know, doing those online, and I think you'll all agree that it's an excellent way to actually be able to you know, connect and get those questions across. So we'll in the next week or so, there will be some details coming out of workshops that we'll do, certainly on membership, I think on foundation, and certainly with public image as well, and with Sean, who's very kindly agreed to do 27 workshops, sorry, a couple of workshops for us. I think that the sort of the big question to everybody is, you know, following the lockdown that we've had and being forced to use technology, you know, how is that going to impact on Rotary going forward, and how do you see that? Do you want to start, Derek?
Well, I in the answer to the last question, I reflected that the way we normally meet is going to have to change. A lot of things which we take for granted now will have to change as well. One of the difficulties that I have in planning is not knowing quite where we're going to be in, say, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months time. In terms of, you know, has this been a success? I think that we've been able to get our message over. At the start, the DG explained that the attendance here was actually much better than we would expect if we held it, say, in Bury St Edmunds, where we would normally do it. Whether it's stimulated people in the same way is an interesting question. You know, certainly I think we've given them the opportunity, and certainly what Sean said about planning how we talk about our image and how we talk about Rotary and how we tell people what we're doing. I think that is really important, and I would like to bring some of those ideas into how we in Foundation launch projects. There's just a tendency to find some needy thing which is really very good, and then just launch into it rather than thinking about the publicity process which should go with it. Have I covered?
Yeah, great. How about Ray?
Well, it's a huge opportunity for membership. You know, first of all, let's deal with the difficulty. Not all of our members have availability to of IT kit. So that might be something the club needs to address, maybe some iPads or whatever. But it's a huge opportunity for membership. Apart from the fact that we can maybe attract people who wouldn't normally be coming to our meetings. You know, they may have mobility problems, they may have travel problems. So that's one area. Second area is we have a great way of actually getting out there. We can show people what we do, and at long last do away with the image that it's men who lunch or something to do with some secret organization. We can actually get out there online and say, this is who we are, this is what we do. There's no big secret about it. We work for you in the community. I think it's a huge opportunity. What I'd like to see though is Sean given some in the workshops, giving us some ideas on how we would get that out there. You know, how on Facebook, you know, do we want to get Facebook to target areas? Do we want to look at particular advertising areas that we can do on Facebook now at very low cost? So I think it's a huge opportunity, and the quicker we embrace it and get used to it, the better. Who knows how long the lockdown is going to be going on for? But let's just embrace it, as many clubs are, and they're not frightened of it now. And I think it's a massive opportunity for us.
Sean, I don't think you have to sort of, keep us for the next 45 minutes answering Berman now. We'll do that at the workshop. But, we are seeing differences being forced to use technology. And do you think that's actually going to be useful going forward, that we're getting more competent with it?
Yeah, I think, very briefly, two things. It does open opportunities. It allows you to bring different people in, different sort of, age groups, different, people from different areas. And secondly, just as Ray said, it allows you to be really focused and targeted. If you use something like Facebook, or, you can actually specify who you want to reach in relatively easily. So I think and also I think what this has done is it's made people think that, and it's not just for Rotary, any organisation, it's not about the organisation and the way you've always done things. It's about responding and adapting to how people want to do things and making it fit around them. So I think it's huge. I think you can really, and the only way is up. So you've got loads to gain from it, I'd say.
Great. And DG,
Well,
we'll have you involved. How about that?
Well, that's a good idea. But there are two or three things. So the important link, as I said last Saturday, was Holger Nock, who's our incoming global president of Rotary. His theme for the coming year is Rotary opens opportunities. And we are reaching further than we were. And the other thing I mentioned last week was the club action plan of the 4 key areas to increase our impact. Well, the things that Sean was saying will help that. Expand our reach. Another thing, if people don't know who we are or what we do, or they have a misconception, we need to put that right. And then enhance participant engagement. Well, I think this links quite well into the projects that Derek spoke about. And if people are doing projects, they'll understand foundation more. And I think that will have a direct link to increasing the giving and the understanding that the Rotary Foundation is our foundation. And then the other thing, which we've been catapulted into, the need to increase our ability to adapt, the 4th area. So we are adapting at a pace we probably wouldn't have achieved if we hadn't have had the pandemic. So I believe we have this fantastic opportunity, and I would like to thank all of you that have participated today, and Guymer's team behind the scenes that have helped prepare this assembly. I suppose then, Ian, it's time for me really to announce what's happening next week. You okay with that? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, next Saturday at the same time, 10 o'clock. So next Saturday, we will cover International with Robert Lubbock, Community and Vocation by Keith Tovey, and Robin Raitt will present Youth Services. 3 key areas which will help us improve our club action plans. So we all look forward. Ian, did you want to say something? No? That's a wave. Anyway, we all look forward to welcoming you again at 10 o'clock next Saturday, the 20th of June. And please remind people that you know in your club that they can get the information that Ian is going to send out, so they can have the link to watch it themselves or in their clubs. So I'd like to thank everybody for showing up this morning and giving up an hour to Rotary. And thank you very much for the presenters. Thank you and goodbye.